Hi, welcome. My name is Kay. This is The Spotlight, the show that looks at local government the way most people don't have time to. Like I said, I'm Kay. I've sat on both sides of the table. I'm a former city manager, and I know how messy the system can be. Here we talk about meetings you didn't attend, the budgets you never saw, and the stories that don't make the official minutes. Around here, we talk about the stuff that affects real life, city halls, school boards, public dollars, and the decisions that shape our neighborhoods. This is the place where policies meet people and where public decisions affect private lives and where we slow down the noise to talk about what actually matters in our towns and our communities. If it doesn't affect your town, your taxes, your kids, if it does, we're talking about it. I'm just a middle aged woman with a passion for local government, accountability, and truth. I've worked in local government and I can feel I can add to the discussions that affect your families. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ciatta Thompson, who's running for House District 33. Thank you for joining me today.
Of
Um,
course.
and in all fairness, I did send over some questions for Ciatta to review. Um, so there's no gotcha moments here. So for with that, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for District 33?
Of course. Well, thank you for having me on the show, Kay. So I'm originally from New York, and I've been in Oregon now for the last 5 years. I've been visiting Oregon now for the last decade, since the 2010s. I actually helped move a friend out here, and because of that, I got to come and see the city, specifically of Portland, while it was on the up and coming. Uh, Cranes in the air, buildings being built, and it was a fun city to come visit. I lived here in 2016 for about 6 months after health scare, and experienced the healthcare system here. It was a wonderful, uh, um, experience for me. I took public transit. I raved about it, particularly coming from New York, where we still had to go to the machine and feed the machine to get tickets and use money. Where versus getting on the buses here, would just be able to tap to get on the max and move about freely. And so I really fell in love with Oregon. And then when I moved back here at the end of 2020, I was just heartbroken as I was driving down 205, and I kept saying blue tarp, blue tarp, blue tarp. And it was like, what happened to the place? For me, it really is I'm a working class candidate. My mom is from Liberia. My dad's from Brooklyn. Working class folks. We got to travel because my mom worked for TWA, if folks remember that airline.
Mhm.
So I got to see various parts of the world. And I mean, always came back very grateful to be an American. Even first world nations still, um, you know, America is a wonderful place to be. This is why people cross oceans and climb mountains to get here. And it's heartbreaking to see what's been happening across the country, but particularly here in Oregon and Portland. It's definitely God's country, and I just really want it to go back to the things that made it work before for the last several hundred years until recently.
And to expand on that, why do you think it's not working? What happened when you first visited and why we're seeing the blue tents? Do you know?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of theories, but the biggest thing that I noticed is that some bad actors came and sold the people of Oregon a story that if you wanted to help folks, you had to empower them by giving them everything they wanted. And that meant food and drinks and letting them do drugs and not enforcing the law. That was too mean. And allowing them to sleep on the street. And unfortunately, these policies, Measure 110 in particular, happened to converge at the same time as COVID. So a lot of things happened at the same time. We saw the Summer of Love that was, it's just been detrimental to the national brand of the city as a whole, the state as a whole. And then, to be quite frank, these Marxist policies from, climate change, so that's tax this, um, to just silly regulations that are scaring businesses away. So it's a number of things that are just converging together that are making it hard for people, average Joes, to make a living.
So that might follow into the next question about what does being a Republican mean to you in today's political climate, and how will you represent conservative values while serving a diverse district?
Sure. I mean, so I'll be frank. I was the second vice chair of Democrat Party in Multnomah County for all about 6 weeks until they figured out that I didn't agree with medicalizing children and that I wanted to enact some sort of DOGE. I agreed with the national DOGE policies that were in place. And so they ran me out of the party, and I just kind of threw up my hands because it just was crazy to me. And so, I was able to find some friends, and they just happened to be Republican. They offered a soft place to land, and that started to change my mind about the Republican Party as a whole. I'll say this: I did for the first time voted for Trump this in 2024. And the biggest thing for me was his no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtimes, and no taxes on Social Security. Who is he talking to when he says that?
Yeah.
So for me, I work in the hotel industry. I've worked in the travel industry for the last 20 years. I started in hotels in 2021. And so for me, it just was a no-brainer. They're talking about as the Republican Party, like they're talking common sense. They're just saying, like, let's just have law enforcement. Let's make sure that we don't leave people languishing on the street in their own filth and their own madness and their own addiction. And let's get them the help that they need. When it comes to immigration, my heart goes out. Like I said, my mother's from Liberia. I'm come from a family of immigrants. And so for me, I understand the path to citizenship is quite important, and it's vital, and it's hard and expensive. And we definitely get to reform the system. But allowing Trende Aragua and folks like that to run wild is detrimental, particularly for the Black and brown citizens that a lot of these leftists frequently talk about fighting for. So for me, it is just a party that has come to just be synonymous with common sense. Like, a lot of it is just like, how do you have a livable wage? Well, you have to have industry. You have to have jobs. And we keep seeing in the headlines, this Oregon branded made businesses leaving. You got a whole host of them, Dutch Brothers. The list goes on, as far as if anybody's been paying attention to the news lately or anything that they see online. It's like company after company. You got Nike, you got Intel. These big, gigantic companies born here are laying off people, and things they're not looking great on every single level that makes it worth living here in Oregon. We're at the bottom, and the majority party has had the state leadership for 39 years. And so, they can try to blame DC all they want, but ultimately they got to hold this loss, and they've got to answer for it.
Absolutely. Great. I did look over at your website, and I just want to give a mention out, if you don't mind. You can find Ciatta's information on ciattathompson.com, and on there's some different points: restore local control of public safety, empowering working families, resolve the addiction and mental health crisis doom loop, end waste and duplication of homeless services, restore election integrity, strengthen communities through home ownership, balance the scales of justice, and make transportation affordable again. Is there anything on there that you particularly want to touch on?
Well, like, when I ran for Portland City Council in 2024, it's the same thing: public health and public safety. Those are the main things. In fact, they're the foundation on which any of the other things I want to propose build off of. We've got to set up long-term housing and drug treatment programs for folks who are not able to take care of themselves. It is heartbreaking. And I work downtown, and I have now for the last 4 going on 5 years. And I've had to see time and time again people who are clearly not coherent, whether it's drugs or mental health or a combination of both, coming into the various hotels I've worked at. And unfortunately, like a lot of people who run businesses, I'm not prepared or trained on how to manage this individual
Mm.
who's in crisis, and then my guest, and then I have to think about my staff, and then I think about myself. I mean, my boss literally got punched in the face by a woman who was acting out. And so um, she's got 20 years in hospitality, not mental health,
Yeah.
facilitation. So it's like, how are we supposed to, bounce back as a city if these are the things that everyday working class people who are going to work in various businesses, mom and pop stores and retail businesses or services, day in day out, they've got to struggle with this type of crisis, and they just don't know how to manage it. They just don't know. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing for me is to something that one of my legislative concepts is to fully fund and really push counties to create these long-term hospitals. I know they've got a bad history, but we don't have to go back to 1950s where we're strapping people to beds
Right.
and doing all the horrible things we did before. We know a lot now. The technologies leaped ahead. So now we can manage things and in a lot healthier way. It would be a great jobs program, something we desperately need here for sure. As far as like getting people the long-term drug treatment, unfortunately it's going to be carrots and sticks. It just can't be all we love you, ooey gooey. We've got to be common sense and compassion at the same time. Um, so for me, that's kind of the biggest things that will help us get started in the right direction.
Oh, I appreciate that. I actually have a little bit of a personal story, if you don't mind. As a city manager, it leaks into people coming into city halls and things like that. And one of the cities that I worked at, it's very, very problematic. I had brought to the council a a funded program where you could have those Calistoga huts like there is in Eugene, and I think Portland has them, where garbage and wraparound services are provided. They have the huts. The individual would manage their own hut. They have a place to lock up their belongings.
Hmm.
They get them into the system completely free, and the city didn't like the optics of it. It's a
Hmm.
very um, Republican type of city. However, they have the problem, but they didn't want anything to really help with the problem. And I feel like there's a lot of breaking down some of those type of barriers to
Hmm.
allow these kinds of things to get people into those treatments, because now those people are still on the streets. Those citizens are still complaining about the homeless.
Hmm.
So I think that we need to kind of start talking to people about what is realistic. If you can't complain about it but then not have a solution, and that's really one of my big things, is not having solutions for things. But
Hmm.
on top of that, I had somebody that was out in the rain, naked, out in the park,
Hmm.
and they were having a mental crisis, and I called the crisis line, and they sent out two people to talk to
Hmm.
the person, but they had no transportation and nowhere for the
Hmm.
person to go. So they left
Right.
the person there. And here is this is what we're funding. I'm sure those people are making a nice salary. I
Hmm.
don't really know what the expectation was, and also this is on city hall property. So, what am I supposed to do? I have
Hmm.
people coming, I have contractors coming, and I have somebody naked out in the park by the kids' playground.
Right.
It's just crazy. So, um, I think we need to have a different conversation than what we're doing currently. So,
Yeah.
and some of these local questions that I have for you, the reason I have these is because I think some of these things are bottlenecks for
Yeah.
getting things done. Um, Specifically, the Oregon government ethics. So I don't know if you're aware, but they did not have jurisdiction in open public meetings until a couple of years ago.
Mm,
And even at that, when an elected official is found to have violated an ethics rule, usually it's a letter of education. It's
right.
potentially, and many of them before something is really done. And how are we, the people, supposed to hold electeds accountable if the rules are they get a letter of education, even if it means that
Right.
they're getting kickbacks or they're giving contracts to their buddies? What do you
Mm.
think about that?
Yeah, I actually filed a complaint against six of the Portland city councilors. They call themselves the Peacocks. I was one of several other people that filed an ethics complaint because in August they had a private retreat in which they created their own agenda, and on the agenda that they created stated close to the bottom was a topic that was going to be potentially up for discussion during city council meeting. Uh, Given that there are several of them on separate committees, smaller committees, they either run the committee or they're on the committee. That to me, in my summation, violated public meeting laws. You know, you can't discuss city business in private as an elected official. And so the Oregon ethics body saw it the same way, and they decided to start investigating. But yeah, in my research of the laws here, it was pretty astounding on how lackluster and weak the laws are when it comes to public officials. Uh, Once I'm in office, that's something I want to address as well. I've actually another legislative concept I have is to basically copy what Florida and from some other states are doing. I lived in Florida for like 15 years, and they've got some of the toughest sunshine public meeting laws in the land. If two or more public officials are caught conspiring, and they're found guilty, then it's a misdemeanor and a fine or a fine into the hundreds of thousands, not just a letter or $1,000. I mean, $1,000 might have been great in 1850, whenever, but like when the city councilors are making $133,000 a year plus benefits, that's pretty much a slap on the wrist. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's something that, I mean, again, to your point, how do you hold people accountable? I spent a very small amount of time on a local city board when I was in Florida, and they drilled it into our heads that you do not mess around with public meeting laws, or you pay these fines or go to jail. And I was not interested in doing any of those things. And you know, the fact that it's so loosey goosey is alarming. But I feel like, given that at least the attention, at least that the governing body, the ethics governing body, decided to at least investigate, says something. They're going to have their findings come this summer. Chances are it will be a letter, to your point, but until we get some tougher teeth on the books when it comes to this type of, requirements for public officials to uphold the law, um, yeah, you're going to have more of the same.
And I just want to point out too, I was a champion for testifying for the ethics committee or the um, Oregon Government Ethics Commission to have that jurisdiction, because what I was
Mm,
seeing is that there were cities that were just going off the rails, and the only accountability up to that point was for a citizen to have to sue, and we should not have to
mm,
spend our own money to hold people accountable. I will also point out that the League of Oregon Cities lobbied against it. So I
mm,
find that quite interesting in some of the things that they lobby for and why that was good for cities. And
mm.
uh, so
Good to
um,
know.
it is good to watch the National League of Cities as well. They
Mm,
give a lot of um, guidance. So,
mm,
and then also we have at the local level, the a public record can include a public employee's application for employment or a customer's utility bill.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you believe that our public records policy is too liberal. And I say that not for accountability reasons, but why why would somebody need your utility bill? I feel like there's no privacy in that. And I am
Mm-hmm.
a certified municipal recorder, so it does speak to me personally, but also I have been stalked across 3 counties, and everywhere I have gotten a new job, these people call up my new employer and get me fired before I can even barely take my seat. So at
Mm-hmm.
some point, it seems like, public records just might be a little too much. But what are your views on public records being able to, and this isn't being able to get budget information or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that, but employees' personal information.
Sure. I mean, so I'm not as familiar as you are in regards to that, but I definitely think it should may unless it's pertaining to some sort of investigation where you delve into like their banking and things of that sort. Obviously, that there's fraud or something to that extent. Sure, then you get dig into that. But as far as to your point, it's like, why do you need my gas or my light bill? That it is seemingly like, okay, my cable bill. Where did we end? So yeah, I think that does get to be modified and adjusted so that it's a lot more reasonable. And unfortunately, when a lot of these laws are written, they don't consider the downstream effects. So I doubt that someone thought, well, someone might look up your utility bill, but these are the effects. So then, it's just a matter of Salem getting back together and lawmakers making the proper adjustments.
Right, right. Thank you for that question. And then moving forward, I did send an article about the equity office, and I find it interesting because this seems to be a problem throughout the state is that something gets, really, they get excited about something. We need a new this or a new committee. This equity office was designed to take complaints from state employees. And whistleblowers, we are hearing over and over and over, are being retaliated against
Mm,
by their lawsuits that they are filing. One of those was at that equity office. Another
mm,
one was a 40-year ODF worker. And in another case, an ODOT worker claimed that there was widespread payroll issues. Both were fired after whistleblowing. Now,
mm.
I hear a lot about how Oregon wants to protect whistleblowers, and yet it seems like that's not happening. And it seems like we would also be able to save a lot of money if we were actually upholding our, well, as the state of Oregon, holding whistleblowers with those protections and not ending up in lawsuits. Do you have any feelings about whistleblowing or?
Well, I'm not familiar with that specific case there that you mentioned. However, I mean, we want the truth to come out. Something I talk about all the time is accountability, transparency, and those things need to be in every level of government, or then forget about it. People aren't going to trust it, and then we have to break down in society. So whatever that looks like, we need to make sure that people whose conscience decides that they need to take some action, that those people are afforded all the protections that the state as the governing body can afford to them, and that definitely backlash or retract or being like fired or stalked or what have you is not allowed. Obviously, that those actions are criminalized and that they are barred from definitely government bodies. We don't want to tolerate that when it comes to private companies. So we certainly shouldn't tolerate that when it comes to the government.
Yeah, thank you. I have a guest that's going to be coming on that's going to talk about the child care fraud, waste, and abuse. this person had been reporting through that hotline quite a few times some fraud, waste, and
Mm.
abuse, and was taking documents down to the auditor's office begging for an audit. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that they ended up doing an audit and publishing it on the Secretary of State's website. So the fraud, waste, and abuse, people were whistleblowing, and
Hmm.
yet nothing was being done. So it kind of goes back to that accountability, transparency, and fraud, waste, and abuse.
Yeah.
Uh, so moving to another direction, many voters feel that federal agencies are overreaching. How would you work to rein in federal bureaucracy and return more decision-making power to states and local communities?
Yeah. I mean, for me, one of the things that really is important for me is like power to the people. And where we, like we've been saying, we got to make it so that the regular Joe can hold public official XYZ accountable. When it comes to the federal government, we have to be able to trust that our governor and the Secretary of State, assistant, or the Attorney General, that they are, in fact, that we're voting for, one, for the right people that actually care about law and order, where they're up or down, left or right, wherever it comes from, that they want to stick to that. And then ultimately that they'll hold the federal government's feet to the fire when it needs to be. And that, but also that we're not going too far and just suing because it's Tuesday.
Absolutely. Small businesses are the backbone of District 33. What would you do to reduce taxes, regulations that you believe are holding back entrepreneurs and job creators?
Yeah. I mean, it's just going to be repealing taxes, some of the climate change, um, you know, laws that have been put on place that make it hard for just normal people to do things. Something that comes to mind is just I mean, now this is a city thing, or excuse me, a county thing, but this could be something for a great example of where now we're getting away from gas powered leaf blowers. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, pardon my cat. She wants to jump in here at
No,
some
she's
point.
good.
But, like, of all the things that we really need to be worried about, is that do we really need electric only leaf blowers? I remember when I lived in Florida, I used to rent a place that I had a little patch of grass, and the tenants were responsible for taking care of the grass. I just found a guy on Craigslist, hired him, and he'd show up with his gas powered lawnmower, and I'd pay him 20, $50, whatever it was. He and his girlfriend, they'd come and spend an hour or so cleaning up the land and mowing the lawn and keeping it nice. So how much, and this is just some kid who wanted to do a business, and it just, he just found somebody's lawnmower, maybe his dad's lawnmower he borrowed or something like that. but for but if he's trying that to do that, if he's trying to do that here, now he's got to get this expensive lawnmower, or excuse me, electric powered leaf blower, that might cost anywhere from $1,300 to $1,600 versus like a $300 lawnmower, just something he can find at a a shop or something like that, fairly cheap, or online, that might cost him a few $100s and a couple bucks in gas, just so he can get started, so he can make some money, so he can take care of his family. For me, it's just like, let's do things that make it easier for folks to be functioning adults. We don't need a nanny state babysitting everybody, because we're all functioning adults and we all know what we need versus being told what we need.
That's a great analogy. I love that. A nanny state. I love it. Um, so parents across Oregon are frustrated with the educational outcomes. What is your position on school choice, parent rights, limiting federal involvement or even state involvement in the classrooms?
Yeah, 100%. People should have the choice to go wherever they want. We just saw Portland public schools get rid of school choice, so that Jefferson can get a higher number of students. Like the city, the state, all of these different entities, government entities, we're losing money. We have to jigger how things are working, and the old playbook is just not going to go anymore. People are frustrated because they're not teaching their kids the things that they need: reading, writing, arithmetic. We got rid of those standards, but they do know every single pronoun in between, from here to the end of the world. So, let's just get back to basics, because that is what's hurting Oregon in particular. And families, you're seeing that with the number of people picking up and moving out of state, out of the county, out of the region. And, when Mississippi starts lumping you over the head with being number one in education, and we're at the bottom of the 50 states, something's went drastically wrong. No shade to Mississippi. Good for them. But like 10, 20 years ago, it used to be the reverse. Oregon used to be the top, a lot of most livable. Portland was one of the most wonderful places to live for a very long time. So we just need to go back to doing the things that worked. And then, the ones that didn't work, we can just try new things.
Yeah, I like that. So your district relies heavily on Highway 30, St. John's Bridge, and TriMet, yet voters are worried about tolls and new fees. Do you oppose regional tolling outright, or would you support it if it was paired with accountability reforms? And then what is the alternative to fund transportation without pricing working families off the road?
So for me, when it comes to ODOT and PBOT, these entities have a well-established record of mismanaging their funds, projects going vastly over their timeline, the budget exploding. You don't need 85 different directors. Let's start with, we can copy what the private sector does. When it's time to start cutting back on the budget, sometimes it's middle management that takes the loss. So let's really start examining, how do you lose $500 million? Who authorized it? Can we hold that person accountable? Or people, because they have to go through several different layers of people, right? So I think we got to start with, to answer your question, no, I'm against tolling. Just because it's just another way for working class people that we're already struggling. I just saw a report not too long ago that Oregon families can't come up with $400 in an emergency. So,
Wow.
That's a problem, and so to add, again, another tax, another fee to life here in Oregon is ridiculous. I say, listen, let's re-examine, look at every single project, like everybody does. Like, we all have a budget, right? And we all have to sit there and look at our budget once a month. And sometimes we can't have 3 streaming services. We can only have one. And sometimes we can't go out every weekend to eat. Sometimes we go out once or twice a month. And we just tighten a belt. We can start with that, and then we can go from there. Ridership is down with TriMet. We just have to be honest. Why? Well, we all know people, are afraid to go on TriMet. It's not safe, all of these various things. But you can't force people out of their cars by tolling them to death, because working class, unfortunately, they don't have the luxury of time to sit there and spend on public transit, unfortunately. And typically, as someone who has spent a large part of my time taking public transit in various parts of the country, that whenever I get a car, I just don't use public transit. That's just the reality. So we need to ensure that the money that these different agencies do get, and this is at every level across the board with any agency, top to bottom, that we're really monitoring the money, and that we're being super careful, and we're able to just look. The sunken cost fallacy sometimes gets us caught in where we've already spent all this, we can't stop now. Well, we have to, and we got to take it back to the drawing board. And unfortunately, it might mean a lot of middle managers lose their jobs. I would rather see that than the working class folks who are working out in the street fixing the potholes that Northwest 23rd desperately needs fixed.
Do you think it's one of the Democratic ploys to pull on your heartstrings, and if you don't pass the transportation package, then you're just not going to get your streets paved and sanded during um, summer, or sanded during winter or something like that? Do you think it's a heartstring thing to make people feel bad, or is that really their answer?
No, it's a definite emotional manipulation. It and I think people are waking up to these talking points that tell you you're a bad person if you don't let homeless people languish on the street, or if you don't check all the various boxes or say all the magic words. People are kind of over it. Like, we've had a decade of this PC talk. And it's like, okay, well, if the policies worked, Oregon would be at the top of the charts in every single way. And rocks are hard and water's wet and numbers don't lie.
I like that. So we're about out at the end here. I don't want to take too much of your time. Is there anything else that wasn't addressed that you would like people to know about you?
Again, I'm a working class candidate. I'll talk to anybody. I'm in a very blue district. That this was Maxine Dexter's old seat, and so as a Republican, I'm climbing a very tall mountain. But the last year I've spent talking to people, and people are fed up with it. And we saw that with the no gas tax uh, petition. Over 250,000 Oregonians stepped up and signed. And I know if we had much more time, we probably would have hit like 500,000, to be quite frank. So, and I saw with my own two eyes that people here in this district, I was got to go to the radio cab headquarters where they had a signing booth. And I mean, within an hour, I saw 3 to 4 sheets get filled up. This is, again, in a very blue district. So the hearts and minds of people, while they still love people, they know something is seriously wrong and they're ready for something new.
I appreciate that. And also, I just want to point out, if people don't know, the gas tax also, I think about 20% of it goes to cities so that they can pave their roads and keep public works. So, if anything in that, I would like to champion and rally around, there's really small cities that really rely on that little bit of money that they do get to help do potholes. I think it, depending on what you're doing, 100 feet is somewhere to pave only is somewhere in the neighborhood of like 75 or $100,000. So it is very, very expensive, and I think it's something like 60% of our cities are small cities. And
Mhm.
if anything, the way that they do the math and how you get that is by population. It really should be the other way around. If you're Portland and you're getting all of the money, where the towns that have 100, 200, 1,000 people are the ones that can't afford it. So I would
Sure.
just like you to know that about cities and how unaffordable it is to pave. So,
Mhm.
well, thank you for your time today, and I appreciate you coming on here, being willing to talk. And even if this gets absolutely no views, it was great to meet you and speak with you. And good luck on your run, and we'll keep following you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too, as well. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Girl tactics.
If you're not part of this, monogamous like one
Mm-hmm.
kind of thought group, you're out, and like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just hardcore
No, and if
censorship.
you agree on 99% and you disagree on 1%, you're still out.
Yeah.
And there's the big tent that was the Democratic Party
Sure.
that I grew up with. It doesn't exist anymore.
On, yeah, democracy. Right?
Yeah, well, this is what democracy looks like, except when we don't agree with you, then we'll set fire to your car.
I just wanted to show that clip with Ciatta talking about the Democratic Party. You can find her again, ciattathompson.com. Also on TikTok. I did not ask her where else she was. I apologize for that. And with that, that's the end of this show. And at the end of each show, I want to highlight something to keep us on a good note, something funny, a do-gooder. If you have any ideas or something that you would like to highlight in your community, someone that's doing a great job, something funny that's happening in your neighborhood, you can send me an email at thespotlighttips with a z.com. And with that, here's our funny.
I'm not quite sure why I'm here or what I'm doing, but there's a reason.
Ma'am, we're discussing the rezoning for the Portillos. Do you have any comments on that?
For what?
We're discussing the rezoning on 53rd for,
Well, I live on 63rd.
again, we're here to hear comments about the rezoning.
Well, I don't like Facebook, and I don't like the internet because I can't find a job. The library blocked my password. Now tell me, does that make any sense to you? I'm not quite sure why.
All the good news I can fit in a minute. Ready, go. This West Point cadet ran into a burning car to save a family who was trapped inside and was able to pull them to safety just seconds before the car exploded. Ash was reunited with his family thanks to the Atlanta Humane Society Pets in Crisis program, and this picture just brings me joy. Radar the donkey was finally saved. He was being abused in South Florida, and Cheryl with Save the Horses refused to give up. After months and months of advocacy, she finally took him home this week. This frog got himself stuck inside a drain. He was really stuck. Frog butt. But animal control was able to save him, and now he's off hopping in the wild. My friend Brittany was finally able to afford a wheelchair-accessible van because the community came together. This is going to make such a huge difference in their lives. This precious woman turned 100, and all she wanted for her birthday was a bunch of police officers to come over and celebrate. And boy, they did. The smile on her face says it all. And these two queens celebrated their 101st birthday with tiaras. Nicole is a nurse and was driving home from her shift when she saw a toddler who was not breathing on the side of the road. She pulled over, and with the help of a Gwinnett County police officer, they were able to do CPR and revive the baby. He's doing great now. This 15-year-old was able to raise enough money to get protective gear for 19 working police canines. It was Community Helper Day at this SRO school, and all of the students surprised her by dressing up just like her. I have another one, but I think I'm way...
Now, why did I show the last clip? That's because the work of local government affects your community, and why I am so passionate about local government and why I implore people to get involved, even if it means saving a frog, even if it means getting somebody a wheelchair, even if it makes a 100-year-old lady happy for some police officers on her birthday. All of these little things make a difference in the lives of everyday people, and the federal government is not going to make sure that your quality of life on day-to-day items are better. Knowing your neighbors, knowing your elected officials in your local town, district, commonwealth, those are the people that affect everyday lives. So with that, thank you. Thank you for watching. This has been The Spotlight. I'm Kay. Good night.